Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We are back ahead of a busy week for Tottenham Hotspur, where really the focus should be what is happening on the pitch. But Tottenham, being Tottenham, of course, can't help but give us drama off it. We'll be getting into all that and more on this Last Word on Spurs. If you're listening to us for the first time, you can find us on iTunes. We're on Spotify. We're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on X. We are on Instagram. And, of course, we're across all of the socials. I'm delighted to be giving out 2 debuts on this show. Who's to say we don't have the flexibility and capability and adaptability in the squad to make it happen? But I'm joined by one man, can I just say firstly, who is fresh off the back of a new opportunity coming his way in life, and a man that I've worked really close with over the last 3 to 4 years. And it gives me great pleasure and delight to welcome the wonderful Matty Hayes back on Last Word on Spurs. And Matt, congratulations in order, my man, because I say you've got a really big opportunity coming up for you. Matt, first, congratulations, and how are you?
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm excited for it finally. Yeah, for those who don't know, I'm joining Transfermarkt. I'm joining their social media team. So the thing that I started as a hobby 5 years ago is becoming a full-time job. So yeah, really excited and always delighted to be back on here, Ricky. Look, for all the talk we've had in the last couple of weeks about Klopp's kids, we're here with Ricky's rookies, and that's where it's at. That's what we need to be talking about. But looking forward to a good chat with Becky and Ash as well.
Absolutely. I will say, can I say these guys that I say, I mean, they're not, I'd say, amateurs of the podcast world. I mean, Bex has been about and done a lot of podcasts, Ash as well. So certainly we're opening some new quality talent into Last Word on Spurs and flexing our muscles in relation to that market. Can I just say, delighted to have Bex alongside us. Becky, love to have you on Last Word on Spurs. How are you? You well?
I'm very good, thank you. Thank you for having me on. I've been looking forward to this. As you know, I've been kind of misering you for ages to get on. I've been speaking to Lee, I've been speaking to Christina, and yeah, it's fantastic to be on. I can't wait to talk about anything. There's never a dull moment with Spurs. There's always something to talk about, and there's always a pod. There's always something we can talk about. But yeah, we'll get to that. But yeah, really delighted to be on. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, Bex, we rolled you in for a quiet one, but it looked quiet to be for up until about 1:30, 2 o'clock today. And Tottenham being Tottenham, obviously dropped bombshells whenever they fancy them. And I think, yeah, the nature of it hasn't gone down too well. So we're getting interested in your thoughts on that. I'd like to have this man on. I've got to say, I've admired his work from afar. So when I reached out to the Spurs Kings, I got on top up Ashmatic. Ashmatic, my man, how are you, bud? You well?
My people, thanks for having me on. Big yourselves up. Hold tight, Ricky, Becky, and Matt in the building. Big up to all the people watching me at home. I'm finally here. I want to thank my mom, my dad. No, I'm joking. But yeah, big up to the people in the comments, man. We're Spurs Kings and Queens royalty here. And we're just going to throw it down and have a good time.
I'll tell you what, Ash has really now crashed the outro of this show because I'm going to hand it to him. And he's gone so strong on the intro. I bet he's got something good to line up for the outro. Ashmatic, my man, love it to have you join us. Looking forward to your thoughts on it. Well, guys, really only, unfortunately, one place to start on this Last One on Spurs. But before I do, I will make a slight honest admission from our perspective. Look, as you guys know, we've been providing you regular post-match shows on Last One on Spurs, even before YouTube, and we go back now 7, 8 years. And I think I will say that the show we produced on the back of that win against Crystal Palace, on reflection, I feel almost, because of the nature of the Villa result that came straight after the game, I feel that really slightly took a toll on the nature of our show on, of course, that Saturday. And I think it could have been a bit more positive given the fact Spurs did win by 3-1. And look, I'm one that is very honest. I'll always look at the feedback of shows and see whether we got it right, whether we got it wrong. I think we have always tried as a show to provide a fair balance of opinions. I think anyone that's listened or watched Last Word on Spurs over the course of the last 6, 7, 8 years will know we always try and be there as a voice for the fans and almost try and speak the truth from the terraces. So I'm going to be honest and say that I think the show produced that we did on Saturday in the moment, I think could have definitely reflected a bit more of a positive outcome. I'm fully aware that Spurs are in a much more better place than what we was really given last year if we only look that far. And I think given that reason, that's why the club have done what they've done, because quite frankly, they know they can do it. And I think that's a really sad indictment of where we are with relation to that announcement today that Tottenham have confirmed that season ticket prices for the 24-25 campaign will increase by 6%. And that's already obviously Spurs fans boasting one of the highest season ticket prices in the country. And I'm sure you can imagine this news hasn't gone down too well with what I will say the majority of fans. Now, as a result of that price increase, it does mean now The cheapest adult season ticket at Tottenham Stadium for next season is priced at £856, and the most expensive, the 1882 season ticket, comes in at £2,367. It's worth me adding, the most expensive junior season ticket is £606, with the cheapest junior season ticket now at £428. The club said, following a ticketing review with fans asking for the club to confirm season ticket prices at the earliest point in the season, the renewal window is now open, as fans also requested to leave renewals open until after the last fixture of the season. The deadline to complete payment and retain your seat for next season is 5 p.m. on Monday, May the 20th, which is what the club explained in the price hike in that statement regarding the season ticket. It went on to say, football is not immune to the rising costs of goods and services across the board, and we will continue to look at all options to minimise ticket price increases while absorbing the vast majority of costs. In the 5 years since the stadium opened in April 2019, there has only been one season ticket price increase of 1.5%. There has, however, been a significant increase in matchday costs outside of our control, such as utilities, rates, and consumables, along with the need to continue to operate at a sustainable basis. For 24-25 season ticket prices will increase by 6%, and we'll come on to the trust shortly, because I know, again, that does spark a whole different debate where we are with them at the moment. But Matt, you're shaking your head there in real anger and frustration. Give me your feelings, Matt, when the club did drop that announcement, which we take on mind by now was Wednesday morning, afternoon, depending on your location.
Yeah, look, I just want to preface this by saying, because whenever I talk about season ticket prices or ticket prices in general, whatever, people point out that I'm not a season ticket holder. I'm not. I live in Ireland. I get over to games as often as I can. I don't have a season ticket, but I do absolutely share the anger and the frustration. And honestly, the most irritating part for me is how tone deaf that statement was. They started the statement by saying, "We are pleased to announce." You're pleased to announce that you're going to be making more of a profit off the fans who have immense loyalty, that have stuck through torrid times in the last 3-4 years, and you've taken this up. They said in a statement, like you said there, Ricky, it's only been a 1.5% increase in the last 6 years. It's because in those last 6 years, the negativity around the club and the club in the way that it was, the football on the pitch that we were seeing, the results were getting worse and worse. You knew you couldn't make money off that. But now when the positivity is back, that's when they're putting the price hike out, and that's not a coincidence. That is absolutely what their thought process was. There was also a statement, a part in that said, talking about how great the atmosphere was this season and how they were thanking the fans, almost as if the club is the reason for that. It's people like THFC Flags, it's people like Spurs Song Sheet, who Tim Winston, who has improved that atmosphere, not the club. The whole way through, it was just completely tone deaf. And also at the end, when they're telling these fans that utilities are going up and rates and all that, the fans know that more than you do. The fans who are spending every spare penny they have to get to the ground, to get to the game, and to support that team know that 100 times more than a multi-million, if not billion-pound club corporation. It's the whole thing is tone deaf. As mentioned in the comments here, the seniors, that's the one I feel sorry for, is that the senior concession ticket prices are gone. They're going to have to pay not just the standard price, but a 6% increase on that price. It's the whole thing from top to bottom is disgraceful. And I always see the point made about German football and how incredible the ticket prices are over there. And I think it was someone high up at Bayern who made the point that if they were to increase their season ticket prices by whatever percent it was, for the club, it would make a difference of 2-3 million a season, which for a club that size is not that much money. But for the fans, the 50, 100, 150 pounds could be an absolute massive difference, and could be the difference between actually being able to go to the games and to not go to the games. And it's for me, it's a similar sort of outlook that I have on this as I did in the Super League, to a much lesser extent. But ultimately, you're pricing out the people who make the club what it is. The players will come and go, the managers will come and go, the owners and board will come and go. But at the end of the day, the people around the club who have been there supporting in the stands for 30, 40, 50 years, the people now who are hoping to be in the stands for the next 30, 40, 50 years, are what this football club is about. And to completely disregard that loyalty and disregard how important they are to everything that Ange is trying to build at the club right now, it's just tone deaf. It's like I said, I replied to it, it's an absolute disgrace. And for me, that there's no reasoning for it. And we know this was supposed to come last year. There was supposed to be a ticket price hike last year. But when that news broke, and there was a little bit of a lot of commotion in the fan base, and rightly so, they got scared out of it. But now they've kept their lips sealed until this statement, which has come as a surprise. And well, it's come as a surprise, but not as a surprise.
You know, Matt, it's very hard to disagree with a lot of what you've said there. Many are echoing those thoughts as many watch it live. And I'm sure those that are listening on the commute back will totally agree with a lot of your thoughts you said there. I mean, Beck's bringing you in. I think, look, I think we totally understand that the cost of everything has gone up significantly the last few years, but 6%. And for reference, the biggest increase since the stadium opened was 1.5%, which I think tells you it's such a big jump. And Spurs also cite rising costs, but RP on the UK is 4.9%. So it's even in excess of that. I mean, what is the justification here, Bex, if there is one, for such an increase, given the fact, we're going to be honest with you, and has been with us, what, 6-7 months? And I think, again, for reference before that, as we know, football wasn't that pretty. And I think as fans, the minute when, again, there's an opportunity to really ride on the crest of a wave that Spurs fans are in a bit of a better place with the football club, is taken advantage of. So, Bex, where do you set it for you?
Yeah, I think often when there could be an opportunity for Spurs to give back or to have some kind of rewarding of loyalty or that kind of goodwill, that they miss that opportunity. There's always something that they just sort of miss on. And like you said, that kind of tone deaf kind of idea comes from is that, I think also the amount of people, they felt that there was going to be an increase, and maybe 2%, 3%, maybe 4%. I think it's the 6% that has really surprised a lot of people. I think when they froze it last year, like you said, because of the backlash, and then they put the match day prices up, I think most people who were season ticket holders felt that this was coming. But I think that the hike is too much. And I think also, it's very likely that we're going to see things like food and refreshments and things in the stadium that are going to go up as well, and they'll sort of happen as well without really people sort of noticing. I think it is too high. The thing for me is the seniors thing. I think if you're a really loyal supporter, season ticket holder, you may have been season ticket holder for 20, 30, 40 years, it's that side of it that's really disappointing, because often a lot of us remember when we were younger, we might have gone to a match with our granddad, or we went with our dad, and we've all got stories as to why we're Spurs fans, and family and going with relatives and that sort of thing is really there. And I think the way they're kind of putting the pricing structure is it's almost becoming sort of, it's lending it to those people that are kind of almost like the single match day fan, and that they'll spend money. And it's, what about those people that have been here, they might live in the area, and that kind of idea of being a fan for a really, really long time, it's almost like, well, it doesn't matter. You are a bit like a customer, and somebody else will come and take your place. And if you don't want to buy your season ticket, somebody else will. And I think in terms of the seniors element of it, there's going to be obviously quite a fair bit of profit, in the sense that those become your adult season tickets compared to a senior. So I think even there's a financial kind of element, isn't there, that they'll have worked that out. Being a teacher, I'm often sat on budget meetings and we're talking about things, and it just feels like it's tone deaf and it's not sort of listening. And I think very much like you said, things, to a point have really improved this season. The quality of what we've seen on the pitch, the kind of attacking sense. I know with all the injuries, and there's been sort of a dip in sort of, the conceding early and having to have all these comebacks, which is as exciting as it is when you're in the stadium. As Madison said, we're longing for a boring 3-0. But why use that and then think, well, everybody wants to come, and people trying to get Arsenal tickets and City tickets on Monday and Tuesday, and being 27,000th in the queue and not being able to get tickets. And they know that people want to watch Spurs and they want to be there, but it always just feels like it's exploitative, and they can't keep using the idea that it's in London and it's there's cost of living pressures and things have gone up. It just always feels like we're being kind of, that, like I said, that loyalty is kind of always being kind of chipped away, and it's awful, because I know people that gave their season tickets up last year and they do regret it and they wish they hadn't. But equally, it's just that sort of, Spurs always seem to kind of miss it. And that's what keeps, we haven't won anything, and it's not like we've,
Where's the justification, Bex? Where's that justification?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard.
I think also as well, we hopefully will get European football next season, so there's also going to be extra matches, and they know this, and that would be that kind of long-term kind of, they like Matt says, it might be £3 million they make across all these price increases, but to each individual person who's paying that 6%, and that's if that's just talking about one season ticket, that might be the family season ticket, they've got more people to take, it adds up, and it, like I said, it's just this, where is that justification for it? It just feels that they've missed again an own goal.
Yeah, again, it does feel like another own goal. And I will again remind people, if they need reminding, Spurs did sell their greatest ever striker in the summer, Harry Kane, for an excess of 100 million. So you do wonder again, with you adding to the fact they've got the go-karting, obviously facilities now, the F1, boxing, concerts going on there. You do wonder again if these things are really necessary. The minute we've got a bit of a feel-good factor at Spurs, I say feel-good factor, like you said there, Bex. I mean, all the games we've had at home, despite the wonderful comeback wins, they've all been quite tight games. I don't think we've ever been able to sit back so far and really been able to enjoy a 3-0, despite how thrilling it's been. Ash bringing you in. Oh, my man, look, it's at the moment for Tottenham, the highest average match day spend in the league, already the highest in-ticket prices in the league, 8th richest club in Europe, and on top of the 6% increase, if you want to spread it with a finance plan for 9 months, they're going to charge you an additional 6.7%. I mean, Ash, how much does this feel an own goal from the club at a time where really they could have actually won fans over? And I've said this a lot with Tottenham. They have opportunities over the years where really they could really show they get it. They understand fans. But every time they're given an opportunity like a penalty, they always seem to miss the target or blaze it over the bar. Is that another one of those opportunities, Ash?
Ricky, my bro, it's transparency. That's the problem here. And I feel like when you're trying to build a club culture, you need trust. We were a broken club not so long ago. Say maybe 8 months ago, there was disarray. Fans were fighting each other. It was civil war. And finally, the club has got itself into a position where things are starting to feel right. You see what I'm trying to say? So all of a sudden, there's a lot of PR. You know, the club have come out with Ange. They've done all these meetings with fans. You know, they've filmed it, which they've never done before. And now this happens. And now if we had a warning, it'd feel a little bit different. So if we saw it coming, but I feel like where it has come out of the blue, and it's not like the results haven't been bad, but I mean, performances have been up and down, or some people might argue that performance haven't been that great. So the mood of the club isn't what it was of the first 10 games. The first 10 games, we were buzzing, we were top of the league. Things were gravy. Do you understand? Now we're into the business end of the season. Things are a bit up and down. And people are complaining, from what I'm hearing, about the noise in the stadium. Oh, it's not quite the same, you know, especially against the smaller teams. You know, the fans aren't quite getting up for it. They're up and down. Why is that? People, why is that? Is it because we're pricing out the locals? The local people, then, the people that live in and around the stadium, the people that are long-term supporters, long-life supporters, they're getting pushed out, and all of a sudden, the noise isn't the same. I wonder why. Is that a coincidence? Now, some fans put up with this because they're like, you know what? I'm going to put up with this because summer window, we need to finance some players. So I'm going to put up with it. But we've all been here before, my guys. We've all been here before. Like me, as a young buck, when I was young, I was looking at Damien Duff, yeah, to show my age right now. Damien Duff from Blackburn. I was like, yeah, we can buy Damien Duff. If we get Champions League, maybe we get a Damien Duff. We got Champions League, and then all of a sudden we're priced out because, you know, we just don't pay the wages. That's not in our structure. And then, like, fast forward to nowadays, people are like, the marketing is, yeah, you know, we're an organic club with this and that. But it just feels like we're on repeat because every summer window, when we get to the stadium, it will be different. When this happens, it'll be different. We're sick and tired. We're tired. Look, we're tired. Our eyes are tired. We're tired. We've heard it before. We've been around this 100 times. Like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Do you understand? And that's how the fans are feeling. And I know you're going to talk about this now, about the trust, but we just feel like, what is it for? Like, what is the reason? Like, what do we even, is there any point? Like, do we even bother? It's like we're not being heard. As much as we scream loud and loud and we try to do this and do little, last season we were throwing balloons on the pitch and we were making noise, making our voices heard about how we were unhappy. It's like, all for what? That's what we feel like, because nothing ever changes. Every summer, it just feels like the same thing. Yes, oh, look, we're spending money. Look, wow. But then what have we got to show for it? And I think it's coming to that time where people have had enough. And this reminds us of it. It just stinks. It's smelly. I don't like it. But that's just my opinion as a Spurs fan.
No, I'll be honest with you, Ash. I think many will honestly be able to echo and feel a lot of what you're saying there. I think just in regards, you bring up the trust there, that the trust have had their say on things from their perspective. And I'll be honest and say that I think where we are with the trust at the moment, I would say the relationship, only from what I can see from the outside looking in, it's not in the greatest of places at the moment. I think it's very well known the fact that there was obviously protest that was meant to take place at the early period of the season. Obviously, Angie's first home game, we was in a situation where those current incumbents didn't actually show up to their own protest, which again, really, through the time we've asked the trust to really stand by the fans on certain things and really, really, I would say, push as hard as they can with the club. And I think we totally understand the transparency that, again, you've got to approach it in a certain way. You can't be going there ranting and raving and screaming and shouting because you're not going to get what you want. But I think it needs to be an understanding that, similar to the Super League, that no does mean no. And I think I've got to say very quickly, Kat and Martin, who spent a number of years on that board, and I think were, for me, looking back now, two of the most, I'd say, selfless individuals in how they dealt with so many fans' concerns, fans' queries. And I have to say that for me personally, to not have those guys on the board anymore is a real great shame, because I think the one thing you knew with Kat and Martin is that they would absolutely 100% fight the corner of every single fan on every query being had out there. And look, what I would say to supporters that want clarity on the situation is, look, there is still a trust there. I've got to say to you that, is there going to be a huge pushback from the trust? There seems to be an acknowledgement that ultimately what has been done is a dismay and is unacceptable. But with relation to the next stage of that, I really don't know. And I think that's the concern, that we don't seem to, at the moment, actually have any real governance in place with an organisation to be able to really voice our true concerns, with the hope that if you've got a problem, it's going to be resolved and going to be dealt with. And I think in this situation, you do need, I would say, hard-hitting characters that are going to hold the club to account, because there's no doubt about it. Look, there is a real good feel-good factor with relation to Ange coming in. And I would say a lot of that, of course, is down to the man himself in terms of what he's done and how, as Ash said, though, he's carried himself in this early period at the football club. And whilst it hasn't all been, free-flying football every week, I think there's all an acknowledgement that we've got the right man in place, and essentially we've got something to really buy into for the long term. But that feeling can very much, start to really, really dwindle if, unfortunately, you're getting situations like this where fans are being priced out, and you're in a situation where, quite frankly, the older concessions, the way they've been treated, I think it's a real, real hard thing to be able to understand and take. And I just hope there is going to be some form of a response from the trust that isn't just a strongly worded statement, but more action. So I think we have to throw it back to the trust. And as Ash said there, what are those guys going to do? What are they going to do? Is it just a case of a statement, or are we going to see actual true action being taken where we know this is not going to be acceptable? So look, we'll wait to see what those guys do in response. We know they have put a statement out from their perspective, which I will bring later in the show. But for the moment, to be honest with you guys, I think the news, it just comes at a point where really we need everyone to be united now for a really crucial period of the season where we go into arguably the biggest game of the season, and where we need everybody together. And I think the timing of it, I think, Matty, you said it, I just think it is tone deaf, because, again, we're pleased to announce the season ticket renewal, details. Again, I just feel there needs to be more understanding for supporters. These are the same supporters that have not seen a trophy for, 2 decades, that have seen their greatest striker in the history of the club being sold, arguably. And I think everybody at definitely points during Angie's tenure can so far see we've got the right man. But I think that needs to be acknowledged throughout the club, that we're all part of this together. And I think, again, the hard thing is that Spurs fans, for me, I know I'm biased by saying this, we are some of the most loyal supporters in the world. And I mean that because, again, when we're younger going to school, it could be quite easy to go and support a Liverpool, an Arsenal, a City, a Chelsea, a United. But as we know, Spurs fans, we don't really win much. So what we do really, I think a lot of people want to see is a brand of football you can resonate with, players you can get behind. And I've got to say, as I've said, consistently this season, this is one of the most likeable groups Spurs have had in a long, long time. Like, if you're a kid growing up now, I don't know how, again, I'm quite lucky. My kids are 1 and 3, so they're young ages at the moment. They're not demanding me for shirts. Even though I'm putting them in shirts, they're not demanding me. But there's so many players that are so likeable in that squad where, quite frankly, you'd want to get 1 to 11 on the back of your shirt. But I think it's really important that we've said this time and time again, fans' loyalty should not be exploited. And I think in this instance, with that increase, that is exactly what's happening. So I really genuinely do hope that there's going to be some form of either appeal or some form of essentially there being a middle ground to play here. And I'll ask you guys on that. I mean, Ash, you spoke passionately to begin with there. Do you think this will stick, or do you think we will see some form of a middle ground here with relation to that increase?
No, I can't see it happening. I think it was in the works before, as you said, because, we kind of spoke up as a fan base and we weren't happy, but they were just biding their time and they thought this was the perfect time to kind of release it. It was mad because obviously so much things came out about being the richest club in Europe, having the highest revenues and incomes. They couldn't hide it anymore. They couldn't hide it. And then to slap that on top, do you understand? That was a bit of a slap in the face, in my opinion. And so I just don't think we have, as a fan base, I don't know if we will rise up again, or because we're in the place that we're in, we're just going to be like, it is what it is. Prices go up all the time and it's just going to wash over. I'm not too sure if we're going to actually stand up. I would like us to unite on the front and make our voices be heard. But whether that makes the club do something about it is something completely separate. I'm not too sure. But yeah, that's
Where
my
does
thought.
it end? Where does it end?
Yeah.
Is it 6% next year? Is it 2% next year? Is it a freeze?
That's isn't it, Bex? Because there's no freeze there, you're essentially really giving the club free reign to at any point in the next year or two increase it further. I mean, Bex, just to let you come back on this, the trust statement, which I will read out for their benefit, from their perspective, that they say dismayed by the club's plans to increase by 6%. They said we oppose any syndicate increase and the removal or reduction of senior concessions, both of which are also opposed by the Fan Advisory Board. I mean, can I just say, with all due respect to the Fan Advisory Board, I think since that's come into play, things have become harder and worse. I don't see any benefit so far of this Fan Advisory Board, given the nature of, again, a decision that really, as Ash touched upon in his intro and has maintained consistently, we've been given no warnings this was coming. I mean, Bex, they go on to say, just so you can come back on this, that the board members met with the club on the 21st of February when we were presented with the syndicate proposals for the first time. During this meeting, we disagreed on several areas, and as a result of our output, changes were made. We do, however, remain hugely disappointed to see syndicate increase by 6%. Discount for senior syndicate and match day tickets remain unchanged for 24-25, but lead to the complete removal of new senior concessions from 25-26. This is unacceptable. The club does say new senior syndicate holders who are turning 65 for next season will receive the current 50% discount if they are in the concession area. But there's been little comfort to those supporters impacted by these changes from 25-26. The statement goes on to say, the club says the number of senior concession tickets has almost risen to 4 times the number of White Hart Lane, and says this increase is not sustainable. We say these changes pull the rug from under our feet from the pensions of loyal supporters. THSC official believes a further discussion at this beginning of this process with the club would have led to more effective input and increased the perspective of an outcome with wider support. So, to be honest with you, Bex, just letting you come back in there, doesn't really sound like, from the trust perspective, they're going to be really forcing this any further than a statement that's been sent out. Is that fair for me to say that, given that?
Yeah, it sounds like they had that meeting towards the end of February and made some, we don't know, what changes. Hopefully it wasn't going to be sort of 10% and they've got it down to 6% or something awful like that. But it sounds like they've made some sort of allowed some compromises, but that was it. And that's as far as they could go. And then they maybe, when this was announced, that's where it's come from. But like I said, where does it end? Is it next year? Is it going to be junior concessions are going to change? Because I know I've got friends all scattered around the stadium who want to move to certain areas and you can't because there's no concessions. And it's like I said, it's going back to that idea that it's like we're an inconvenience. We're supposed to be the people that really build this club. And thing is as well, like what you were just saying there about how there was like a good feeling around the club, and with all the FFP going on with other clubs and them talking about how things are going and points deductions, and I've read a lot on X people going, well, actually, despite all of their faults, our club must be reasonably well run. But remember, we sold our best player. We've had all these years, we went 2 transfer windows without making any signings. We have suffered, and we've, as a result, maybe come out the other side, and we've got a little bit more kind of FFP, and therefore other clubs are kind of looking at us aspirationally. And then all of a sudden it goes because they then bring that onto us. And I saw a lot of people defending the way the club was run because, you know, we've had the hard seasons through COVID, and now we've got, you know, full attendances and everybody wants to be there and the revenue and all of that. And then again, it's this sort of idea that, oh, right, here we are with again having to kind of say, actually, it's us that's been dropped on again. I just think there will be other things. It's like you said about the transparency. We could do with knowing of almost like a 5-year model, or maybe the FAB are you know, privy to that, or the trust, because otherwise it's just 12 months time we're going to have the same conversation. Is it going to be something else? What is it? You know, it's that. So Ash said that's about the trust. And about our trust with the club is that and that's why the trust have said about it, the rug being pulled from under them, because they would be the ones that would arguably be more in the know than us. And if people are usually, it's like I said to my friends about the blue card business, I really think that was leaked to see what people's reaction was. And the reaction was it was absolutely ludicrous, and now it's gone away. It's almost like they could do with telling us some things, seeing how it goes, and then we can go from there. And that's where they don't do that. It's very much a sort of them and us. And we're just the little people down here.
Yeah, I think the problem we've also got, Bex, with a lot of what you say there is that the situation we've got at the moment, Matt, coming over to you, is that when you haven't got, I would be honest and say this, I think for me, I won't mind saying this again, you know, I think I'm being honest and saying this, when you haven't got the THST in the most strongest of places, and you've got a situation where the club, to some degree now, are really selling out home games, you know, bi-weekly very, very easily. I think, again, for those that I mean, another issue we can go into, which divert the show even further, is the usage of getting into the bloody website to try and buy the games. I mean, that's another factor. But the issue you've got now is you can't even get a ticket because of just how popular it is to go. And I think the problem is, Matt, is that when that demand is there, that supply and demand is going to be there, the reality is I think the club are going to use it to their advantage every single time. And that's despite selling Hurricane, the F1, the concerts, the boxing. I think that, again, is where fans, I think it's very, very hard to get on board with this current board. And I will say this on a number of occasions. Look, again, many ask us, are we ENIC in or ENIC out here? You know, LastWordOnSpurs is a vehicle. You know, it's again up to you wonderful people that come and listen and watch the show every week to make your own minds up. All we can give you is the facts that are out there with relation to where we are. 20 years without a trophy, selling the best striker of the football club. You know, every opportunity Spurs have had to build. I said for the first time really out of the January window that I actually was quite happy with the business Tottenham done. I think that's the first time I've ever said that about a window under ENIC. Does that mean that we couldn't have done more? Of course we could have done more. Of course we could have done more. But I think the reality is that every time we're in a situation where it just feels a step is taken forward, we go 3 back under the current ownership. And I think it's a real shame. And Beck said it so well at the start. It's a real own goal at a time of the season where really we want to all be together. We really, really do. And I just want to read you, Matt, if I can, just the update, I will say, from THFC Flag. So I think, again, those guys were superb. They have now cancelled their TIFO that they have planned for the home game against Manchester City, and said, following on from that decision to remove senior concession tickets and increase all senior prices by 6%. We've unfortunately made that decision to cancel our TIFO for the Man City game, but we could not, in good conscience, continue to raise money from this display, knowing the negative impact this ticketing policy will have on the fans. Our group relies on the loyalty of thousands of fans to spend their interest in designing, funding, and helping to create these displays in the stadium. And we've seen the club exploit fan loyalty under the guise of inflation, despite being one of the richest clubs in the world. We're told financially that we're in a strong position, yet the decision to become the first team to stop offering new senior concessions is an insult to fans who spend a lifetime following the team. The club acknowledges that the atmosphere in the stadium has been terrific this season, and we'd like to have played a very small part of this alongside the likes of Return to the Shelf and Spurs Song Sheet. Over the last 2 years, we've all worked very, very hard with the club to improve the atmosphere, but this has been undermined by that decision that men will be priced out now. Anyone who's donated can email THFC Flags to get a refund. But I think a really well-worded statement from THFC Flags. And Matty, just to close you and summarise on this, Matt, you expect any really form of rebuke here? Anything to come out of this positive-wise?
No, they wouldn't have come out as definitive as they have, and like Becky said with the blue flag or the blue cards and that being neat to see what the feeling was. I think that's what happened last year, And this year they didn't want to go through the hassle of having to find out the opinion before they put it in writing. I think what they've said is what they've said, and that's the way it's going to be. And I think that this thing from THFC Flags, which I was going to bring up as well, is it's the tip of the iceberg, because at the end of the day, as much as these people in the boardrooms can make the decisions, as much as they can look at the bottom line and say, well, that needs to be a little bit healthier, it's the people in the fans and the people on the pitch that are going to be affected by this, because we're back in a race for Champions League. It's maybe looking likely that the top 5 will be enough for that. I don't think that's going to be in the feelings of the fan base when we play Villa on Sunday, when we play City and the next couple of weeks. We're going to want to win those games. We're going to want to get top 4 to be absolutely certain. And I think when we're in a situation right now with how positive things have been on the pitch and how much we're falling in love with the manager and the players, that if we had missed out on top 4, of course we wouldn't have been happy, but we would have seen the progress and we would have known that it wasn't for the want of trying.
Yep. Whereas
now, if we miss out on top 4, it's going to be toxic, because it's going to be where they're charging fans 6% extra to not watch Champions League football. And again, to use Becky's phrase, it's just an own goal in every single way. And I think every time Tottenham make a decision like this, we're reminded about the difference between a football club and a business, which is what Tottenham are becoming, and the difference between fans and customers, which is what they're turning us into. It's just really upsetting, because it is taking advantage of the fans. And when they see these massive queues of people trying to get in for tickets, if they have 60,000 tickets to sell and 100,000 people that want them, they know if they up those prices by 6%, there's probably going to be a 60,000 in there who will be able to afford that and who will pay it. And it's all just taking advantage of the loyal fans that have been through thick and thin with this football club, because they know that we love the club so much, and we love the team so much, we love Tottenham Hotspur so much that we'll continue to turn up. And I think, look, action needs to be taken. I'm not sure what degree or how severe that action needs to be. If it is some protests at games, or if it is something more severe in terms of boycotting games, something needs to be done to show our feelings about this. But at the end of the day, the stands are going to be full anyway, and I don't think Daniel Levy and co will care what we have to say.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, we mentioned Europe there. God knows what's coming next season with regards to those packages, Europa League, Champions League. That's another discussion, and one that, unfortunately, we won't do on this show because, again, the nature of time frame. But look, guys, hopefully that's covered a lot of what people feel out there for sure, and we'll keep you updated if there are any changes. We hope there will be, but I think, as Matt said, don't hang your hat on it. What we are going to do, we are going to go for our belated first break of the show for our listeners on audio. We've got over 2,500 of you watching us live here. So, again, thank you so much for all your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. We're joined by Matty Hayes. We're joined by 2 debutants to Last Word on Spurs. I've got Becky D with me, Becky back with me there. And I've got Ashmatic too. Try and say that in a mouthful. And we've got one called Ashmatic joining us on this Last Word on Spurs. Right. Bizarrely, guys, we've got a game. I know it's mad. We've actually got a game to talk about now. On the back of that, I'll tell you what, where do we go from here? Arguably, really, I've got to say, Spurs' biggest game of the season yet to come in terms of Aston Villa, which for many, I'm sure, will, again, be apprehension, concern, excitement. But I think, as Lee McQueen eloquently always puts it, these are the games you want to be involved in. These are the games that can really change the narrative of a season. But before I do come on to Villa, I just want to get you guys feeling on really how we're playing at the moment in terms of the current form guide. I mean, Ashman, come over to you. I will make that point for those that missed it at the very, very start of the show, that I made a real honest admission that I felt that the show we provided on the back of the Palace win, I think could have been more positive and could have reflected a better outlook, given the fact that Spurs are coming from behind to win, although it's not bright. And I think the key thing is, if I'll be honest with you, Ash, what reflected for me more was when you saw some of the weekend's results, the City one, for example, the 3-1, where what you're seeing is now teams that are deploying, in United to some degree at times, that low block. It can be really, really hard, Ash, to break teams down. And sometimes the narrative looks like the team isn't playing great here. But when you are having to try and break down 9-10 men behind the ball, it is very hard to try and make that look attractive and to make it look great. So, Ash, tell me how you feel at the moment going into the biggest game of the season. How would you say Spurs are playing for you?
I personally think Spurs are still trying to learn how to play that possession style of football. I still feel like Spurs are at their best when they're transitioning really quickly. We counterattack teams. We're on the break, and there's space in and behind, if that makes sense. So our profile wingers, for example, they like to run in behind, and they like to carry the ball where there's space in behind, and they like to cross the ball. And then you've got your strikers or at the other side of the wing, they're able to tap that goal in. So I think that's what it is. When you've got teams now that see what Wolves did to get a result, they're like, oh, actually, that's how you play Spurs. I think it actually happened before Wolves. I think it happened around that Luton time. I remember we played Luton. Luton frustrated us, but we got the 1-0 win. Then we obviously played Chelsea, and that high line was mentioned. And then teams were like, actually, you know what? If you let Spurs have the ball, let's see what they have to kind of break us down. And at the time when we lost against Chelsea, and we had all those injuries, we had to figure out how to beat low blocks with injuries, with people away at international cups like the Asia Cup, the AFCON, etc. But I don't want to use this as excuses, because now we've got all of our players back, and there was an expectation in the fan base that we were going to go on and push on from here. And now what's happened is, because of that Wolves loss, I actually think that affected the players, because they were used to being brave on the ball. We used to praise them for taking their man on and, you know, getting on a half turn. Players like Basuma, for example, he was excellent at ball carrying. He was excellent at dropping the shoulder, doing Cruyff turns, beating his man, taking players out. All of a sudden, you're not quite seeing that from him. You see Maddison. Maddison's on the ball. At times, he's trying to find a way in. He's dropping back into that 6th position. A lot of fans are unhappy. Why is he playing the 6th role? Why is he? We're losing that extra edge up front if he drops to collect the ball to play that line breaking pass. But if no one's doing that line breaking pass from deep, then he has to kind of do that. So then you've got one less player in attack that has that guile to kind of break those, you know, low blocks. That person's no longer there up top. And then on top of it, you've got facets like Werner that, you know, he had his chance against Palace. But again, he has that history in the Premier League where when he was at Chelsea, he missed a host of chances. And when it came to the crunch time against Palace, it's almost like the fan base kind of expected him to miss. And then when he did, it was like, oh, Lord, look what we have here. Do you understand what I'm saying? So on the back of that, Johnson's been getting pelters as well. People didn't really respect the signing off the back of Kane going. And the price tag of the young boy was a lot. So with that price tag, you expect that player to hit the ground running, just like Kulusevski did and Bentancur did. Do you understand? So we're fans. We see things in black and white. We see things in linear. And so he's 47.5 etc. million. He needs to be good now. It's not like he's come from Europe. He's come in the Premier League. He's been playing. It's not that much of a jump off in some fans' eyes. Not all fans. I say some fans. And I think that's where the frustration lies, because you've got Kulusevski, who was amazing in the first part of the season. And then now it's like, everyone's saying he's predictable. Have Spurs come predictable? Is our midfield even that great? Is the midfield overhyped? Everyone's starting to question, even down to Ange's tactics. Why are we inverting fullbacks that don't take their man on or don't shoot when they're in that number 8 role or that number 10 role inside the channels or inside the pockets? So that's the reason why there's such a feeling of, you know, we won 3-1, but, you know, it's been coming like these poor results. We're not playing, not poor results, poor performances have been since that Wolves game. We didn't blow away Brentford. Brentford, we won 3-1, but it was a similar game.
Another low block team, isn't it? Another low block.
Another low block team, and another team where, but I mean, you could look at it in another way where 45 minutes, we were putting pressure on his teams. Yes, we didn't create a lot of chances, but we pinned a lot of these teams back into their own half. For example, Glasner, he likes to use wing backs to push high up. I didn't see Mitchell or I didn't see their other fullback push high up. Why? Because our players were pinning them back in their own half. And then after a while, I know it's like people like us going sideways, but eventually legs get tired. And that's the reason why it keeps happening like that in the second half, because we're pushing it left to right. We're probing. We're trying to figure out a way. We're like playing chess. And then one pocket opens up and then boom, and then bang. And then all of a sudden 3-1. And then also Ange's in-game management has been critiqued quite a lot. And I feel like he got it right against Palace by bringing on a different profile to Kulusevski, someone that's going to go on the outside and credit to Johnson because he was aggressive and he was persistent in his aggression. And I think that's what fans have been missing from Johnson. Even if you don't have the ability, it's just doing the obvious thing and doing it right away and just playing it into the space, because the goal he created for Werner, a lot of people was rating Son for doing the jumping in that pocket and then jumping back out to create the space. And then even vice versa, when Werner did it, he went one direction and then he went to the other way. And that's how we got into the end of the shot. And everyone's like, actually, if those three can create some type of relationship in that final third, then we might actually be onto something.
Yep.
And so there's small little pockets where people are saying, oh, Ange Ball, it might work, you know, it might come together. Yes, we're not cooking the way we want to cook right now. But guess what? Your doggy, he's got the potential. He's how old? 19, 20, you know? He's going to make mistakes. He's not going to be blowing teams away every single game. You've got Porro that's going to come back into the sides. Emerson Royal, as good as he was, or some people say he was terrible, but defensively, no one can critique him. But going forward on the ball, people might be a bit more critical. But what you have with Porro will give you that out ball. He'll give you that ball where he can whip across in. Now, people are saying, Richarlison, you need him for that. Do you know what I'm saying? But at least now we've got different components and different factors and different variables where we can change games, we can win games in different manners and different fashions. Now, people are complaining now about Basuma because they're saying, on the ball, he's not quite as good. For me personally, it was his first game back against Wolves, right? When he came back against Wolves and he made that mistake, he took the risk, because that's what it's about with an Ange system. It's all about risk. The more you risk, the more the reward. If the risk messes up, guess what? You get punished in this league. And that's how it is. When he took that risk, guess what? Wolves punished us. They scored. Now, what happens as a result of that is now he's thinking, my next game, I might not take that same risk that I was doing at the start of the season, that I was doing against an Arsenal, that I was doing against a Manchester United, when I was doing like cross turns inside our own box. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So those small things made him think, against maybe a Crystal Palace, I'm just going to sit and play the 6 role. I'm not going to venture forward and take risks with the ball. But guess what? I look pretty decent because I'm winning the ball back high up for the team and I'm recycling it. I'm giving it to other players to express themselves. So where we've lost on one side, we've gained on another side. I personally think you will get to see the best of Basuma eventually, but because of what happened in previous games, they're human beings. They're gonna have doubts. They're gonna have worries. Even if Ange says, make mistakes, if you make a mistake, it's on me, don't worry about it. They're still gonna have that in the back of their mind that actually, I might be letting the team down. Do you see what I'm trying to say? And Absolutely. That is part of the reason. That is part of the reason why that we're not super fluid like we were at the start of the season. It's those small, even your doggy making mistakes. He's made so many mistakes. He might not be going as forward. He might not be in the pocket or in the channel or getting to the byline and doing the cutbacks like he was doing against Bournemouth. It's those type of things where that's the reason why we're not super fluid. Even Werner and Son and Udogie, in a positional play, they're meant to rotate and they're meant to interchange in a triangle and create little pyramids to draw the opposition over to one side that creates gaps. But because that relationship isn't there between Son and Werner quite yet, not saying they don't want to pass each other, but in terms of that Son going to the wing and Werner becoming the number 9, that's not quite fluid yet. So when we start to see those relationships start to happen, then we can start to see things where, okay, Spurs can open up these low block teams or vice versa. Do you know what I'm trying to say? But yeah.
Listen, Ash, I hear you on that. I think, again, it's interesting, Matt, getting Ash's take on there, because there's a lot I think many would agree with there. And I think, again, what's hard is, again, I will make that point, is when you're doing these shows straight after the game, there's a lot of adrenaline, there's a lot to take in. I feel, again, it's a bit of a skill and an art to be able to give that instant analysis, because you're trying to really come to terms with the fact you've just watched 96 and a bit minutes. There's elements of joy, there's elements of frustration. There's elements of what have I just watched. But I think, again, there's no doubt about it. Spurs are dominating a lot of the possession against those sides that do come in and play almost with a low block. And look, Matt, someone that obviously works in football, studies it like you are. I mean, Matt, how hard do you think that is to really try and, ultimately give a real conclusive narrative on it? Because I think, again, when teams are coming with a low block, I think it is hard to really see a progressive brand of football, because ultimately the other team are there to stop us. So is that, again, a massive issue that recently the teams that we've been coming up against and deploying those tactics are another reason why we've not been able to see a real expansive Tottenham, because they're just putting 10-11 behind the ball and saying, break us down.
Sorry, my mouse isn't working. I couldn't unmute myself there for a second. Yeah, look, it's been a problem with us for way too long that we can't play against a low block. But it's you don't see City and Liverpool having that problem because they have consistency not only with the players that are on the pitch in terms of them knowing their roles within the team, but also the relationships they have with the players, but also consistency in that they've been doing the same thing for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Chelsea right now, they struggle against low blocks. Manchester United struggle against low blocks. And it's because of the constant change, turnover in manager and in players. We need to have patience and allow what Postecoglou is doing to come into effect. And not only in him trying to get his message across to the players, but in him figuring out the players who are right to play that system. And look, I'm a massive fan of Johnson. I think he has huge potential, and in certain moments, in certain situations this season, he's been absolutely immense for us. In that game against Brentford and that game against Palace, he came on and he completely changed the game and was absolutely pivotal in us turning those games around. I obviously also acknowledge there's been times when he hasn't been good enough, when his end product isn't there, but we need to trust in Ange to figure out if he's the right player to do that. In the midfield, Ange needs time to find out what's the best balance, what's the best dynamic in there, because Basuma, Bentancur, Sarr, they all offer things that Maddison obviously as well. They all offer very, very different things, and it's not only finding out who the best three are, but who's the best three when we're playing a low block, who's the best three when we're playing an expansive Aston Villa or an expansive Liverpool. All of this does take time, and look, again, I understand the frustration. I understand how people are losing the patience in this, because it's been the same story time and time again, but giving up on something after 6, 9, 12 months isn't the answer to this. You know, I'm not going to use that lot down the road as an example, but I could, because they did stick through those hard times, and maybe that's something that we need to just do with Ange. We've stuck through a lot of hard times outside of that, but it's tough, like you said, Ricky, to in the moment see that. But I think when you look at it from a bigger picture, we're a lot better than we were 12 months ago. We have a much better squad than we did 12 months ago. We're getting better results than we did 12 months. We're playing better football than we did. That progress is there. And to kind of give up on that, and I'm not saying anyone here is, but I know there are some fans who are losing patience with it. To give up on that right now, in my opinion, would just put us right back in square one. And we might have another manager who could come in and play good football to start with. But then if we end up 12 months, the results aren't there. It's just going completely around in circles. And I'll bring back the point that I said. I think it might have been after the Wolves game, the first one when they beat us at Molineux, that we started the season so incredibly well. It was the honeymoon period. I think not only the honeymoon period, but also the fact that there were a lot of players who turned into robots last season. Some Basuma and Sarr who weren't getting any game time, but they started the season with freedom and with the ability to express themselves on the pitch. And at the start, that was absolutely fantastic. And again, the way I described it was the heights that we hit at the start of the season, and then the lows that we hit in that run of Chelsea, Wolves, Man City, and West Ham, in the way that we played. It was always going to middle out somewhere in between that this season. And I think while the performances aren't fully there, but we're still getting some results. I mean, we're third in the form table. We need to just see what's happening, see the progress that's there. And look, Ange it's weird in that, because he is older than most managers in the Premier League, but the way that he's playing is new and revolutionary within the Premier League. He's been doing it elsewhere, but the way that he plays, the risk that he takes, the high line, the way, obviously the inverted fullbacks, we all know about it. It's new, and it's going to cause problems for other teams, but it's also going to be difficult for our players to fully figure that out and fully understand their roles in every single moment within that team. But I have faith in Ange. I have faith in the players that it'll happen. And look, there are things that I don't think are right. I think we need to take more pop shots at the edge of the box. Ash was talking there about being able to play that chess and opening up the spaces in that opposition defence. You're not going to be able to do that if you're being predictable. If the ball comes to Maddison in the edge of the box, and you know he's either going to ping it out left to Son or out right to Werner, no one's going to close him down and try and cut off that angle for a shot, because you know he's not going to take it. If every now and then we did, that's when defences start being unsure what's going to happen. Maybe a centre-back comes out to pressure Maddison, and then Porro's in that space. You know, that's what we need to do. It can't be robotic, not in the same sense as what it was under Conte, but it can't be robotic in that it's the same thing every single time. But yeah, look, it'll come. It might be tough watching it. It might be tough watching us lose games against Wolves like we did, but I have full faith that it'll come with the current group of players and coaching team that we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting thoughts on the guys there, Bex, bringing you in. I mean, do you have a real vibe on it, Bex, in terms of how Spurs are performing at the moment? I mean, again, I think many will acknowledge the fact that, as I keep on reiterating the point, that when you are playing these sides, essentially putting 10 behind the ball, I think it is hard to see a real exciting, expansive brand of football because it is really hard to play against that kind of team. And again, I think there is a slight concern over the first half performances. I think you've now got to go back, I believe, to, I think it's New Year's Day, I believe New Year's Day, the last time Spurs scored in the first half of the game. But I think what we acknowledge is, again, that, when Spurs are in the second half of the game trying to win it, I think, again, we acknowledge the fact that it's hard when you have got so many players behind the ball and then ultimately saying, break us down.
Yeah, I think the thing that's frustrating is like when we play a high line as well. So when there's any mistake, so Ash was saying there about Basuma against Wolves, Bentancur did foul for the free kick. I know the free kick went in, and maybe 100 times it doesn't go in, but he was booked, and then he ended up going off later on, and he was frustrated. It's when we play a high line, the counter attack comes really quick, and we're just so lucky that we've got Van de Ven, because watching him race players is just fantastic. But there's going to be times where that's just, we are going to, there's going to be, this is arguably supposed to be the winnable games that we have, and we're struggling against the winnable games because of the low block. I think it's we can see what needs to happen, and I agree with everything that's just been said up to here. Kulusevski needs to take players on more. I think Werner and Udogie, you can see when either one has the ball on Saturday, you could see it was kind of like they were pointing and it wasn't quite going to where it needed to be, and it's not as automatic. The thing I noticed as well about Son is he was dropping deep quite a lot. Now, of course, when Kane used to drop deep, Kane used to ping it over to Son. If Son's dropping deep, he hasn't got anyone to pass it to, and you could just see that he's standing in the south stand and going, oh no. So that's, I think, what's frustrating. We actually had a chat with the people around me at half time and said, is it, because my husband texted me and said we had 78% possession. I went, oh, yippee. What are we doing with it? Are we actually trying to kind of, exhaust teams and sort of stretch them to the point that then we have these 10-11 minute spells? Because as Ash said, we had a 10-11 spell against Brentford, we had 10-11 minutes spell against Palace, and as lovely as it was watching Johnson cause defenders to fall over, and it's like I said, we want to see those. The Palace goal, for example, the away Palace goal, where it was literally like one touch, Johnson heads it to Maddison, Son scores, and that was what Ange ball was. And we had that in the Chelsea game, didn't we, when Son was offside? And that was what we really like, that kind of open, expansive play. And I think possibly what's happened is we have been found out, and there has been, like you said, if you kind of put enough people on the edge of the 18-yard box, that restricts what's happening. And then Basuma, Maddison, Sarr, Bentancur worried about making a mistake, and then all of a sudden you're hoping that Van de Ven and Romero can catch them, and I think that's the problem. But when it works, it's just magnificent to watch, and it's just so great to see how it just pings. And I think I've had a lot of discussions this week about Werner, that I think for the amount of money that he will cost us, he should stay, because he could have a summer with Ange, and then he would be working with Udogie, and it would be this sort of, you could see things kind of coming to fruition. Richarlison gets injured, Son's been playing on the left, now Son's in midfield, in the middle, and changes are having to be made. And it's just, as much as we've got our sort of more first team back, again, something happens, and then we've got changes to be made. And as lovely as it is looking on the bench, like you agree with what you said before, we have got options now, and the option we're bringing Johnson on at Palace, and we do have that, provided we're not 2-3-0 down. Unfortunately, I think when the Chelsea came, a lot of people were saying it had been coming, the West Ham game, you could see that we hadn't played matches well for quite a long time. And I still think Newcastle and Man United at home were probably the two games where we did play really well for long periods of time. Weirdly, we played very well against Villa, ended up losing. We had all those chances at Villa and ended up coming away, which is why I'm quite nervous about this weekend. They're having a kind of a great season, and there's lots of expectation with them. And yes, they play Ajax on Thursday, but it's not that far. It's only a nip over the channel in an aeroplane. It's not, Turkey, for example. So I think they'll kind of, them coming to that game, it's going to be quite tricky, which is why I think, like you said, top of the show, almost every game at the moment is the most important game that we come to. And then when we've got that, we've got Luton. you know, after you get past that game, that's when we've got that run of the City, Liverpool, Newcastle. Where are they going to put Chelsea? Is the City game going to move? It's a really important phase that we need to get these niggles with the formation out of the way with the so-called lesser teams, because it's then, you know, we might be on the end of an absolute thrashing if a team does really kind of, you know, the counter-attack and there's mistakes in midfield, and it could be catastrophic. And I think that's what, despite having, I think we're 10 more goals than the same point after the same amount of games last season. And I think having the 7 wins and the 2 draws for the first, you know, 9-10 matches was fantastic. But it's kind of, some people have got to bring the expectations down and say that actually there's still a lot of things that need to happen. As lovely as it's been, you know, taking Jack, those of you that know me, I take Jack, my 11-year-old, and he's loving the fact that there's all these goals. And he said yesterday, you can't believe how fast the season's gone. That's because it was so slow last year and everything felt so much more hard work. So he's loving that. But again, we want Champions League. We want to be higher than Champions League. You know, we want to be not worrying about the so-called kind of, you know, Wolves, Palace, Luton side of games. You know, if we want to be with the big boys, we've got to be in these matches and we've got to be competing. And at the moment, you know, City are really kind of flying at the moment. Liverpool, despite all of their injuries, you know, we're not at that point yet. And I think that's where the frustration comes, is that although it is a massive improvement, we're still not at that point yet, which is why we need this summer.
I think, again, Bex, I think the key is that I always say this, that when you've got them not down the road doing what they're doing, that unfortunately does still have an effect on the fan base, because I know we don't like to admit it, that the way they're brushing teams aside and playing, although, again, we've shown that in periods, I think that's what we want to see. I'm not saying we can't see that. I'm not saying we won't see that. I'm saying that I think, again, that's a process that's taken 5-6 years there to get to. We're still in the infancy underhand. I think we're well aware that if we back the manager and give him the tools and anywhere near the money that Arteta's got, I mean, look, we'll get there. But again, I think the key will be, look, I'll throw it back over to the football club. If you're willing to raise ticket prices by 6%, go and raise the money that needs to be done in the summer to give Ange a squad that is really capable of competing. What we are going to do, look, we are going to go for our final break of this show for our listeners on audio. I will say there's a couple of thousand of you watching us live here. Thank you so much in attendance here. Across the socials, on X, on Instagram, on Facebook, across YouTube again. Thank you so much for all your incredible support. We're joined by Becky, we're joined by Ashmatic, and we're joined by Matty Hayes on this Last Word on Spurs as we build up to, of course, big game for Tottenham Hotspur in the Premier League. Aston Villa away. You've heard there from Under the Gas Limp podcast, the Villa preview from their perspective. Look, Villa go into the game in a pretty decent position from their perspective. They currently sit 5 points above Tottenham Hotspur in the Premier League. Again, worth noting that last-minute winner, God, gave them an absolute joy in terms of having that gap restretched over Tottenham. That win against Luton in the final seconds. It means Tottenham are in a situation where really, in my opinion, going into Villa, I think we need to go there and at least try and come away with a point. I think once you get into a situation where if Spurs go 8 points behind Aston Villa, when we touch upon, of course, Spurs' April to come, it's going to be difficult. So it's a big game for Tottenham in the context of the season. We've had some really nice interviews, actually, in the build-up to the game. Mickey van der Ven, Christian Romero, both talking respectively to different outputs of terms of TV. Opta Sport with Mickey van der Ven. Again, how can we just not love Mickey? I mean, what a player he's been for Tottenham. Just ultimately unbelievable, that guy, in terms of his pace. And it's arguably amazing that, you know, you win 3-1 against Crystal Palace, and it's the defender gets the most praise in Mickey van der Ven. He was remarkable. Romero's come out this week and said he's been working really hard on his discipline, which means there's a definite red card to come against Aston Villa. But bearing in mind, he doesn't know how hard he's been working on it. But a joke, look, it's a huge game for Tottenham against Unai Emery's Aston Villa, who, to be fair, has transformed that football club. And Unai Emery, I think, has a really strong record against Tottenham. Correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think Unai Emery has lost to Tottenham yet throughout his managerial career. Correct me if I'm wrong, I think that is the case. I'm looking at Matt now to tell me if I'm wrong, but I think that is the case. Unai Emery is really strong in terms of his record against Spurs. But guys, what I will open up and say, look, in terms of the context of the season, I'll start with you, Ash. How big is this game for you against Aston Villa on Sunday?
Psychologically, it's massive because you win against Aston Villa. Not only is it revenge, but it just puts down a claimer that we're serious. We're gonna pin them back to 2 points. It's all back in our hands because we have the game in hand as well. So if we actually take the 3 points off of them away, and then we win our game in hand, then we go back into top 4, into that Champions League spot. So right now, it's all about pride for the actual club, you know, to say that we are a bigger club than you. We deserve to be in that top 4 race. We've been in that top 4 race as well. And again, it's to prove to the players that, yeah, they need to be here. They need to stand up. They need to be counted. And they're showing the fans their worth. I think it's time that, you know, we actually turn up in some of these big games and get all 3 points, not just a point, and the performance. And I sound like I'm being greedy, but I'm really not, because when you check it and you remember the last game, Becky's already said it. We outplayed Aston Villa and we had so many injuries at the time. However, I personally think that was a slight blessing in disguise, because I thought that first game against Aston Villa was one of the best games of football I saw Spurs play. Now, the reason why, for me, it was one of the best games that Spurs played, and it's a weird one because we had Brian Hill on the wing. Like, he's one of our weakest wingers, but we had him on the wing. We had, obviously, Son up front. We had Johnson was on the right, and then we had Kulu playing the 10, right? Or the 8, whatever you want to call it. But he was in the hole where Maddison normally is. And then you had Bentancur, who was just coming back from injury. I know he had Palace, he had a few other games where he came back against Wolves, etc. But he had a few games, but it was him and it was Lesoso, who wasn't really a fan favorite at the time, in midfield. Now, the reason why I liked it so much is because I couldn't tell who the 6 was and who was the 8. I couldn't tell who the 6 was, who the 8 was at the time, because they were interchanging so well. And what I liked was even sometimes Porro inverted, and when they were playing balls past that high line, or they're doing those balls really in quick transition, I saw that Lo Celso, he was like a deep lying playmaker. Bentancur acted like a deep lying playmaker. Pedro Porro acted like a deep lying playmaker. And Tottenham's strengths, from what I remember at the start season, was ball carrying. You've got, obviously, your doggy. He's a ball carrier, great dribbling. You had Basuma, great ball carrier, dribbler. You had Sarr, a great ball carrier, dribbler. But all of them, I felt like, where are my ball carriers? All of a sudden, that's no longer an issue. You've got players that can, we found a different way. And Aston Villa could not handle it. We absolutely tore them to pieces. And I'm like, wait a second, we've actually got an issue. And you guys have alluded to it already, where you're saying Maddison's dropping deep, and even sometimes Son's dropping as a number 10 in the hole. But then when Son's dropping in that hole, he's got no one to pass it to. When Maddison's dropping in the hole, in the 6, he's only got Son to pass to. He hasn't got many options where he can pass it into, and they can create those chances where we go on and score. So I'm looking at it and thinking, wow, actually, Lo Celso's fit. Bentancur wasn't happy with his performance. We have a few key components where actually, if things aren't going too well, we can create and cause Aston Villa quite a lot of problems if we allow one of our creators, not being Maddison, to play in that midfield and Maddison play in the pocket. Let Maddison play in the pocket or play like a false 9. So then you've got 2 number 9s in Son and in Maddison, and they're 2 of our best strikers. I'm not saying we're going to change our formation, but I'm just saying if they play closer together, then if, for example, Son drops in the 10, Maddison can play in the 9. He can like make a run in behind. And I saw that a little bit against Palace. If you watch the game back, you will start to see it in the first half. Doesn't quite come off. But I'm just saying, we've got players now that if we wanted to change it up, and for whatever reason, Basuma didn't want to do that ball carrying, and we're like, why isn't Basuma ball carrying? We've got another option off the bench that like, actually there's space in behind. We can hit our wingers in Werner. We can hit a winger in Kulusevski, or take Kulusevski on and put Johnson on. Now we've got options where we can hit balls over the top, into the channels, diagonals, etc., etc. And so all of a sudden, you're not so worried about Villa. You're looking at, well, actually, we've got an opportunity. If you look back at the last game, let's look at what we did well, how we hurt them. How they hurt us was Emery. I give it to him. He's a master tactician. He knows what he's doing. He saw that they were struggling. He said, they're out muscling us in midfield. I need to put an extra midfielder in there because Kamara, who I think is an exceptional defensive midfielder, alongside Douglas Luiz. And remember, he's out. Kamara is out. So that's an advantage to us. So is Ramsey. Ramsey's out as well, box to box. I know he didn't play in that last game, but lately he's been doing bits. Do you know what I mean? So for me, you look at Longley, you look at Konza, you look at Cash even. I know Romero's going to want some spare change. Do you know what I mean? Some vengeance for his boy Ben 10, you know what I'm saying? But like, I just feel like there's chances we can get at their defense. Moreno in left back, we can get at that. They're not the super fastest. I know they're really clinical at playing that high line, and tactically they're on point. But I just think we have an opportunity to pounce on them. I'm not disrespecting Villa because Villa have got the Watkins. He's got double digits for goals and assists. Like, he's on stuff. He's got 16 goals and 10 assists. Yep. I'm very worried about that because he's a player that doesn't need a lot of space, a lot of time. He just needs an inch. Do you know what I'm saying? And then back of the net, no backlift. Then you've got their wingers. Obviously, Diaby, he hasn't really been starting, but they've got the Jamaican guy. He's on fire. The Jamaican brother, he's got what, 8 goals and 8 assists.
He's on flames. He's on flames. He is.
Nah, he's on stuff. He's on stuff. Yep. Bailey, I couldn't remember his name. Bailey's been, and then on top of that, Douglas Luiz being box to box. He's been box to box. So I am aware of what they bring, but it's high line versus high line. Tielemans can be a problem when he drops into that kind of midfield as I call it the false 9 kind of. He kind of drifts /8. He kind of drifts in between the two, the defensive line and midfield line. He kind of helps to dictate that play, and he can become a problem. But I think if we play our game and we take our chances, I think whoever's most clinical wins that game. And I think that's the reason why Becky's slightly worried. This is the reason why you're slightly worried, because we know how clinical Villa can be. Do you know what I'm trying to say? So that's what it is for me. It's just because our front three haven't been clinical, and that's why I'm like, even against the Villa game, Son had 2 offside goals. Do you know what I mean? And it's about, and that's not like by accident, that's by design. That's how Emery's got his team set up, where that defensive high line, they've done it in such a way. We've got to learn to somehow curve our runs, maybe sometimes shuffle across and then make that run. Delay the run, then make the run. Maybe do, instead of doing 3-4 passes, maybe 3 passes, then go long, or 2 passes, then go long. Do you understand? Or just 1 pass, go long. Do you understand? Because there's nothing wrong with going long and go direct, because that means you're going to beat the offside trap. When you diver, like Højbjerg did at that time, and he put Son through, that's the difference. It's those millimeters, those inches that are going to matter in a big game like this. So,
Ash, I tell you, it is those margins. I mean, Beck's bringing you in. Villa have won their last 3 Premier League matches and 4 of their last 5 ahead of this clash. Their most recent win, as I mentioned, that 3-2 win against, of course, Luton. Now, the concerning thing, of course, is that a win for Villa would open up that 8-point gap between the two sides with just 10 games left to play. And I think what many would feel for Villa, that's putting 1 foot in what would be their first Champions League campaign since 1983. I can't believe I'm saying that. Is it really been that long for Aston Villa in Europe? It's mental to say that. I mean, Bex, for you, we talk about the importance of the game. Where will it be won and lost, in your opinion? Where will it be won and lost?
I would say that thinking about the home game was set pieces. You know, I remember the offside goal that Watkins scored, wasn't it? And I know they conceded against Luton free kick. I just think it's those kind of margins. I think I agree with what you said. Watkins is really on it. I think a lot is being bigged up, isn't it, about the kind of Romero cash. Whether that's going to be a thing. I just think if we play the way we can play, we will do what we need to do. I just think, like I said earlier, if we don't do that early enough, you know, Villa score, they get their crowd get behind them. We then maybe our heads drop. You know, we talked earlier about, you know, if there's mistakes being made, those players will feel that it's their responsibility. Can we turn it around? I think we can turn it around in home games. It's a lot harder to turn it around in away games. Thinking back to the Everton game, you know, we were again conceded for a free kick that Kulusevski gave away, and Everton equalised. And those sort of like almost kind of lapsing concentration. Really, we've got to be on it for the whole game. I think they are very much the momentum's with them. They are beatable. I was listening to the Luton game coming back from Spurs driving back to Chester, and I was really disappointed that Luton couldn't hang on for the draw. I think, yeah, that 8 points is a bit. There's a lot still to come. I think I read somewhere about what Villa's remaining fixtures
they've
were.
got a tricky running. They have got a tricky running. Aston Villa won't be an easy running for those
no,
guys,
and
doubt.
if you factor Europe in as well with that, you know, possibly maybe fatigue will get to them. But yeah, I think if you've got to beat the teams above to catch them, you've got to beat them, and that's where we, you know, to kind of pick up those points. Yeah, I'm at the game. I'm hopeful. I think we need to start well. If we don't start well, it could be because the away game last year we didn't play well. I know it's a different formation and arguably different players, but I am nervous.
It will be nervous. I mean, I think just to put it into context, Spurs are in a position where, again, as Ash touched on and you've touched on, Beck, you know, Spurs a win would bring it down to 2 points. Still with that game in hand, away to Chelsea. That at the moment, we're not sure where the Premier League are going to dump that in. I mean, I think many being Spurs fans know that's going to come into April, isn't it? When we've got City, Arsenal.
It'll be on a Thursday. I bet you, like the Arsenal game was. It'll be on a Thursday.
You know what? I mean, that game will go a long way to deciding Spurs' fate in the Champions League. And Chelsea, given the season they're having, I think that would be the highlight of their season if they would stop Tottenham getting in the Champions League. I think it should be pointed out that no team have lost fewer matches on the road in the Premier League than Spurs this season. They've only been beaten away from home only twice. Worth me obviously putting that point out there, which again, many will rise a smile to because it might feel like we've had more, but no, only the 2 defeats on the road. And to be fair, when you look at Tottenham away from home, look, got a credible draw at Manchester United, unlucky not to win. Arsenal away again, Spurs dominated that game for large periods. Again, maybe unlucky to come away with just a point there. Of course, we've still got to Anfield, still got to Stamford Bridge, as we know. But look, I think the Spurs side have shown, Matty, to come over to you, that they do like a challenge against some of the bigger sides. And that's only where some of our best performances have been this season. So I want to know, Matt, from you, how pivotal would it be the fact Villa are going to be playing Ajax on the Thursday? I mean, Beck's picked up on the point. Look, it's not a huge amount of travel or distance, but it's a week of disruption for them having such a crucial game where you'd imagine they'll go full strength, won't they, Matt? You'd imagine, Villa?
Yeah, absolutely. It's look, no one knows the Europa League slog better than Tottenham. You know, it's really not fun. And our record after Thursday night games tells you everything you need to know. It's not going to be a decisive factor in the game, but it's certainly going to be a factor, especially with the intensity that Aston Villa like to play and you know the pace that they have with Watkins, with Diaby, with Bailey. It's going to have an impact. But I think that the biggest thing, as Ash was saying, how Unai Emery is a master tactician, they're not going to have very long to prepare specifically for the Tottenham game. And look, I imagine it's going to be a difficult one for them in terms of prioritizing games. They probably approach it the two the same, but a good European run in their first kind of season back in Europe compared to really trying to solidify that place for Champions League football. It's going to be a massive week for them. It'll be mentally and physically draining, but I don't think it'll be draining enough to the point that will hand us the game. You know, it's still going to be a really good tactical battle on the football pitch, and it's going to be a battle of two quality sides with quality players. And where I think we can really hurt them is, I think for fans watching, it's going to be difficult because I think it's going to be a very heart and mouth game because with the intensity that Villa press with and the way they like to compress the pitch in the same way that Tottenham do, I think if we can really draw them onto us and try to find those pocket of spaces in the middle of the pitch, whether they, you know, typically this season they've been kind of pressing and defending in a 4-4-2 where maybe Emery in the past would more have decided, PSG especially, putting kind of 3 players into that position. 3 centre mids in there. If he goes with that'll make it a lot more difficult for Porro and Udogie to get on the ball in those spaces for Basuma or Bentancur, whoever that 6 picking up the ball there. But I think that's when, if that's how this game goes, I think that's where Dejan Kulusevski could become really important because we know how much he loves to hug that touchline and play really, really wide. And I think just being able to find the best approach to take to stretch this Villa team as much as possible and to find those pockets of space to bypass that press with the high line that they're playing and the pace that we have in that front line, whether it's Son and Werner or Son and Johnson or Son and Richarlison, that's where we can really hurt them. Now, look, it's easy to say that's where they could also hurt us, but I think for me personally, I have the faith that a Van de Ven and Bentancur or Van de Ven and Romero will be able to compete against that pace, even in that high line. You know, Bailey is absolutely rapid, but I think Van de Ven is a little bit more rapid. So for me, that side could be covered off a little bit, but on the far side, does Romero, is he able to deal with Watkins and a Diaby coming over the shoulder? It remains to be seen. But I really do think that we have the tools in our kit to hurt them and to capitalize on the way that they play. But they do the same. And that maybe then is when it comes down to experience in these big games, in top 4 races in the Premier League, which we certainly have in abundance over Aston Villa. On the football pitch, off it, Emery probably a bit more experience in that regard. But that's where I think when you're plucking these advantages that each side has is where you realise this is a very finely balanced game. And like you mentioned, Ricky, this is the type of game that you want to be involved in, because this time last season we were involved in dead rubbers. We were going playing mid-table teams, and we sometimes didn't really care what the result was going to be, because we knew at the end of the season the result wasn't going to be what we wanted. But yeah, I'm really, really excited for this one from a kind of football analysis point of view, but as well as from a fan point of view. But it's going to be a very good game. And just to let you know, Tottenham beat Emery in 2018-19 in the League Cup. So yeah. God, you got to brush up your stats, Ricky. Come on.
Listen, you've got to say you've saved my night there, Matt, by telling me that. Now I feel a lot better in myself knowing that. Joe, in the back of my mind, I was thinking, did we beat them once? Again, Unai Emery's a manager. I think we've touched upon it. Really good tactically. I've really been surprised. To try and deviate away from anything else, that I'm surprised that he's not been given a mention for the Liverpool job. I think he's done such a good job at Aston Villa, Unai Emery, that I think Villa are really, really lucky to have a manager that I think has shown there to go in there and transform them to a club where, quite frankly, they're fighting for the Champions League. They could even go far in the Europa League, which I think would be a massive advantage to us if, of course, they take the Europa League seriously, depending on how we finish. Guys, it's been a really enjoyable show. Before I let you go, this is the time where we've got to make that famous prediction in terms of what we're going to go for at the weekend. It is a huge game in Spurs' season. We'll get team news from Ange, of course, on Friday. We'll know more about how Spurs are going to line up. Obviously, there's been few murmurings out the camp. We've obviously heard the news that Richie, he thinks he'll be back. Whether Ange thinks it is another question. Ange shut that down very much after the game at the weekend and said, look, he's 2 or 3 weeks away. Richie reckons he can play this week. We'll see. He said Saturday instead of Sunday, so I wonder if he did mean this game or he meant the week after. But we shall see. Pedro Porro, another one I think many would love to see Pedro return. I think, as Ash touched upon, it's so important, influential role down the flank of being able to produce a good quality ball. And look, I think ultimately Spurs go to Villa, a place that has been quite a happy hunting ground for Spurs in the last 7-8 years. I think they've won 8 of the last 9 there. They go there and win Tottenham. The confidence that would give the club going into this conclusive period of the season would be huge. So, Bex, we'll start with you. A nice, easy way to come to an end. An amazing debut on Last Word on Spurs. Bex, what are we going to go for against Aston Villa away?
Well, my prediction for Palace was 4-4 because they score, we score, and we thought it was crazy.
Just a quiet one.
Yeah. So I do think it'll be quite a high scoring game. Sonny likes a goal against Villa. I remember when he scored the hat trick and he scored that last minute winner with the broken arm. So Sonny likes a goal like he did against Palace, against Villa. Let's say 3-2 to Spurs. But let's try and score them maybe sort of, 60, 70 minutes rather than 97, 98, although I would take that. But yeah, thanks so much for having me on. It's been, I've loved it. Thank you.
I will make you laugh, Bex. It's been an absolute pleasure. You did say just earlier that we're all striving for this boring 3-0, and you've gone for a 3-2, and you mentioned a 4-4 there. I mean, God, what's happened to the calmness of the game, eh?
I know. Let's have a 3-0 against Luton. Let's get the result against Villa. Closer to 2 points, and then we'll have a nice, easy game against Luton. That'll do. Fingers
crossed. Bex, where can we find you on the socials?
I'm on X, Becky D, Becky. If you see me and Jack in the South Stand, always give us a wave, come and say hello, or if you see us in the Coach and Horses. But yeah, thanks for having me.
Bex, been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Ash, my man, been great having you on. First time, hopefully more to come, same as Bex. Ash, prediction for this coming Sunday, what we're going to go for?
Man, I'll keep it short and sweet. It's going to be 2-1 Spurs. I'm going to keep it positive. We don't like low blocks, but we love a high line. That's where we see the best of Spurs. So I expect them to have a lot of chances. We're to have a lot of chances. But on the day, I think the boys are going to turn up. We play well, especially away from home. Madison's got a good away record as well. But I don't know if you guys remember that. And Sonny's our captain. So we need our big players to turn up on the big occasions. And I think against the bigger teams, I think Spurs tend to turn up and surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, I do.
Especially when we don't feel like it's going to go right. We just do the madness. Yeah. That's the typical Spurs thing. So, 2-1 Spurs. And again, thanks for having me on. Big up to the people in the chat, the listeners, as well on the podcast, on the Spotify, etc. People watching on TV. Love as always, man. We're all one family, one Spurs community. And yeah, man, thanks again, Ricky, for having me.
Honestly, mate, pleasure's been all ours. Been an absolute pleasure, my man. And like I say, if only the club could follow that in terms of one love and the fact that we're all one, we would be not in a position where we've got to talk about what we spoke about at the start of the show. Matty, my man, going to close it with you. Don't know, Matt's going to bring some realism now. Bearing in mind, he's just got an upgrade of where he's working, bless him, for his next role. Matt, you're going to hit me with something hard now. What are you going to go for the weekend? Although they're now refusing Matt to give the result. I've got to unmute Matt to try and allow him. You know, for some reason, I can't unmute Matt. As it's fun, isn't it? Why can't I unmute Matt? This is hilarious. Can I?
I'll just say one more thing. I'll say one more thing before he comes on.
I'll try and unmute Matt. For some reason, I just control to unmute Matt. Don't ask me why.
You guys can catch me on Spurs Kings TV. That's an important thing to say. I forgot to, if you guys want to catch me again. And yeah, that's the best way to catch me. We've got a show on right now. It's Rivals, it's different. So we've got rival fans on. But yeah, guys, man, thanks for having me on once again. Is Matt there yet?
Ooh. No, we're trying to get Matt back in. We might have to, for the sake of our benefit, we'll let Matt tell us on visually what he's going to go for as a prediction. So Matt is going to do a visual. He's going for a 3-1 Tottenham, 3-1 Spurs win. There you go. I tell you what, this show goes to new parameters now. We do everything on the show. We can do miming. We can do anything you want us to do. We can. We've been cut off by wonderful Matty Hayes, the top man he is. Matt, we're wishing you the very, very best, Matt, with your role to come. We're looking forward to having you back on soon. Beck's likewise back on with us soon. And the wonderful Ashmatic. Go and check him out. And Spurs Kings TV. Look, guys, from us all here, please keep safe, keep well, keep fighting the good fight. What I will just say very, very quickly is that if any of you guys have got concerns with relation to season ticket prices or increases that you want to get in touch with us, you're more than welcome to do so. And we'll pass those on acutely to the relevant parties. You can email us by going to our website of LastWordOnSpurs@outlook.com. That's LastWordOnSpurs@outlook.com. We'll do all we can on this. But from myself, from the wonderful Matty Hayes, from the superb Becky, from the brilliant Ashmatic, we've been the Last Word on Spurs. Keep safe, keep well. And as always,